All right. How we doing?
We're doing great.
I like your light blur. Let me add a light blur.
Yeah, soon we'll need boom mics.
I know. Dude, I got a matcha, but I don't even like matcha. So I don't know why I actually got this. And now I think I'm gonna. It was like one of those things where I like walked to the coffee shop. I walked to La Cabra with Lauren and I saw someone else with a matcha and I was like, that looks like it should be tasty, knowing that
Hmm.
I don't actually like how matcha tastes. And I still got it.
Yeah,
What is wrong with me, man?
for me, matcha is good like 1 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
And not to ruin matcha in the preview session here, but I think it tastes like fish food smells sometimes.
Yeah. Sorry to those in
Just,
attendance. No, we're
yeah,
still
they're not
together.
here yet. So it's just you and I. But I think we're live streaming on LinkedIn. So our few viewers on LinkedIn
For
may
those
have
logging in on
see my
LinkedIn.
negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the opposite of an endorsement? A detraction.
Yes. Tyler is hating, as the youth say.
Yeah. I'm going to slowly evolve this podcast into just like my kind of weird takes on like New York daily living, such as like pizza is not one place. It's just an idea and it's not that good
Totally.
anywhere, but it's kind of good everywhere.
And who at the Equinox today took your bench when
Oh
you were
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. What is the ideal like 15-minute increment to enter and leave the weight room and locker room? Yeah.
Chad, welcome. Welcome to the pod. You heard Tyler and my preamble.
Yeah. I'm
Thanks,
slowly
thanks for
taking
having me.
this over as for my personal soapbox and rants and raves hour. So
Funny. We just finished our quarterly offsite, and we're at this fancy coffee shop called Classic Rock Coffee. So I've been ranting all day.
oh
There you
great.
go.
Great.
Nice. Where are you calling in from, Chad?
I'm in Springfield, Missouri. That's where our 3PL, the good company, is headquartered. There's that
Nice.
represents with the shirt here.
Cool.
Um,
Nice.
yeah, sunny middle America.
Awesome.
Okay,
Well,
great.
excited for this. We're about to go live soon. And Chad, just to give you some context, as we're actually going live on LinkedIn right now, Tyler's about to start letting folks in from the waiting room. We treat this as kind of a mixture of a webinar and a pod. So we'll just go through. This is being live streamed. There are people who come in live, but then we take everything, we treat it in kind of like a podcast like format, and then we'll chop it up and repost and repurpose it after that.
Love it.
Cool.
Cool. Should we
All
hop
right.
over?
Let's do it. Tyler, kick things
Great.
off whenever.
Cool.
All right.
All right. I see some familiar faces. Thanks for your patience, folks, while we launched today's session. We'll go ahead and get started here pretty much right on time. And welcome back, everybody. After a 1 day hiatus, we're back with our daily tariffs and trade webinar series. I'm Tyler, the brand and customer experience lead here in Pietra. As always, if you have questions for my team and me, reach out to us at creators@pietrastudio.com. Just click the chat bubble in the lower right-hand corner when you're logged into your Pietra account. We are here to help. For today's session, really thrilled to be introducing Chad Carlton, CEO of Good Company. So Good Company is a 3PL, third-party logistics company, and e-commerce company that builds custom solutions for sophisticated brands. Their whole mission, and Chad, I'll let you speak to this in just a minute, is to solve hard problems and deliver joy to their fulfillment customers. He's really in the trenches of logistics, fulfillment, hands-on and customer experience there. Really pleased to get his take on what brands are doing now to adjust to the new trade and tariff policies. It'll be great to get a perspective from someone who's part of the supply chain as well on the logistics side. So really excited to have him here. And as always, Prince Gosh, CEO of Factory Quality, our in-house sharp mind when it comes to all things tariffs, sourcing, QC, and operations for brands who want to stay on top of the ever-changing policies and twists and turns of this current era. So just to ground us, for those of you who are joining for the first time, Pietra, modern infrastructure platform for commerce. We help brands navigate sourcing, fulfillment, compliance, and everything in between. And these sessions are part of that mission. We want to make sure you're staying informed and prepared and equipped with the right tools. So, Chad, Prince, I'll hand it over to both of you. Chad, you want to say a few words about your bio to kick us off?
I know, I think you did a pretty good job of it. We're a 3PL based in Southwest Missouri. I spent the last decade on the retail side. We scaled an aggregating retailer to just short of 60 million. And then one of our largest manufacturers that we purchased from asked if we'd do their direct to consumer shipments. And it made a lot of sense. We were pretty good at shipping packages for ourselves and makes sense to transition to doing it for other people. And a new business was born, which I purchased out of the parent company, and here we are today. We ship about 10,000 shipments a day. That's a slow day. That's 30 or 40,000 in peak volume periods, but all of it out of Southwest Missouri, 90 miles from the dead center of the U.S. The best place to ship from for cheap overhead and good postage rates and good time in transit, and I've got the data to prove it.
Great. And
Yeah.
I noticed, Chad, that Good Company is the best kept secret in e-commerce. How can we change that? What's the best way to get in contact with you and your team?
You can email me, Chad at goodcompanyships.com, or you can tweet at me, Chad Carlton with an E on Twitter. We're the best kept secret mostly because we've gotten to several million shipments a year off referral business alone. If I'm being honest, that logo is clip art, and that website was put together on a conference call one day. So we've just found doing good work gets a lot of good people talking about us, and that's gotten us where we're at so far.
There you go. Very, very
Sure.
cool. Super exciting. Tyler, shall we kick things off with sharing our daily deck, and we can go through a couple of updates and then take things from there. Chad, thanks for coming on. So excited to have you on. I don't think we've properly gotten a chance to chat, but have kind of seen you in and around the Twitterverse. So excited to do this and dive deep. Just again, as a reminder for everyone on the call. My name is Prince, founder and CEO of Factored Quality, which Pietra acquired at the end of last year. Factored Quality helps 150 plus brands from the Everlanes, Dr. Squatches, Honest Companies, Harry's of the world run quality control and factory audits on their products and goods across their supply chain. So as you guys are all thinking about finding new factories and placing purchase orders to those factories, give us a ring if we can help you out here. And so excited to dive in. Tyler, shall we go to the next couple of slides and go to our daily table update? So, actually, right before that, just going back to the previous slide, just as a quick reminder for everyone on the call, nothing that is stated here should be taken as financial or legal advice. Chad, unless I'm mistaken, I don't believe you were a licensed customs broker, nor am I. So anything that we all say for the audience, please do take as perspective and opinion, but your licensed customs broker should truly be the only person that is legally, financially able to help you classify your goods and actually advise on import process and what tariffs and duties you should be paying. And then just as a reminder, again, for everyone listening in, the reason that we've been doing these daily webinars is because now about 20 days ago, if you can believe it's been that long, Tyler, the Trump administration had what they called Liberation Day, which was a day where they started imposing massive sets of import tariffs on goods and products coming in from outside of the United States into the US. And so on the back of that, we have been trying to synthesize what is the latest and greatest in and around the world. And we've been pulling in guests like Chad and others to chat about the impacts on brands, the strategies that they are seeing brands employ if they own brands themselves or if they work with other brands, and things that you can do across every step of the supply chain to try and minimize the impact of these duties and tariffs on your P&L. So that's why we're here. Tyler, should we go to the next slide? Cool, folks. So we have been keeping this up to date, and actually, I'm so sorry. That's a typo. That should say April 24th, 2025 at the very top. But the latest and greatest right now, folks, is this. So Last week, the Trump administration basically said that they would put a 90-day exclusion on goods coming in from countries outside of China, but we're still holding strong on the tariff rates for goods coming in from China, anywhere from 125% to 245%, just depending on what the product is. As of the last couple of days, there have been a lot of rumors of a trade deal to be had between China and the US. There's nothing that has yet been finalized. And so the general perspective is still the tariff numbers hold as they should be. The first couple of shipments of goods coming at least on ocean container from Asia to the US have started hitting. And what we're seeing as a result is the first sets of brands and retailers actually changing prices, either direct to consumer or via retail channels, to reflect some of these increased duties and higher cost of goods sold that they're going to be paid. So this is what's happening. This is the latest and greatest. As we've been chatting about for the last couple of weeks, everything on the board of de minimis shutting down is still in rule, starting with China and Hong Kong on May 2nd, and then rolling out to other countries after that. As we've said in the past, the process of suddenly implementing these tariff changes and duty changes is quite a bit of a shock to the U.S. government and its systems and processes for being able to actually capture all of this information and then ensure every importer is actually paying their duties accordingly. So there have been delays in shipments. There have been delays in customs clearance. Plan for it to be a generally turbulent and kind of tumultuous time, but we're trying to keep abreast of what is going on behalf of everyone else calling in. Chad, anything else to add about what you have seen or observed, let's call it in the last 48 hours in particular, this week from the 22nd to today?
Man, I'm not sure if you wanted to open that can intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, not legal advice, but I've got a lot of strong opinions that I've developed over the last 48 hours. So interrupt if some of this is unclear. But in the last 48 hours, I've met with the Customs and Border Patrol directly. That had them at our facility to talk about a handful of things. Yesterday, I met with the governor of Missouri to talk about these things, and then for a good portion of today, I spent researching on really what portless business model is, direct shipping out of China. And I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on it. But all of this has been prompted really rolling downhill from conversations that I'm having with e-com retailers of considerable size who are looking for immediate relief and exploring potential solutions. We're just a 3PL, but obviously we need our customers to get us goods to continue shipping. So their problems are my problems. And I've found myself at the intersection of trying to figure this out. Maybe some of this will be not necessarily new information for you guys, but I just want to throw out what I've explored. The two things that are coming to the top of the list, I got to be careful. If I do this too much, then I'm going to get the balloons. The two things that are coming to floating to the top in conversations with brands. Number one, a bonded warehouse. Should we be considering a bonded warehouse? A quick brief on what's ideal about a bonded warehouse or a free trade zone warehouse, which for practical purposes in e-commerce companies, these are going to be essentially synonymous, are deferring duties until the time of withdrawal. You can import goods logistically that comes in, arrives at port, and then it is assigned a transit bond. So you're going to use a bonded carrier to move it from port to your final destination. That's another $250, $350 for the carrier. So not anything necessarily consequential. It's going to arrive in bond to a bonded warehouse who's going to enter those into the CBP's ACE system as your goods stored in bond. You can withdraw those goods and drip them out to your separate 3PL, or maybe your 3PL is a bonded warehouse where they're going to have a line drawn in their facility, and on one side is your bonded goods that haven't yet had the duties paid, and on the other side is the goods having their duties paid. A couple of really important distinctions. You would pay those tariffs according to what the tariffs are on the date that you withdraw them. If you're interested in using a bonded facility, you're either in a cash flow pinch where you've got goods that are already destined for the US and you couldn't stop them, but you can't afford this sudden huge spike in duties, or you're betting on tariffs going down at some point in the reasonably near future, or maybe it's both. The really key distinction that we discovered in conversations with the CBP is this: unlike Section 321 entries, which were staged in Canada or Mexico or even China, and you were using the de minimis or even potentially just paying duties on each transaction individually, the order of operations is reversed in using a bonded facility. You can't sell the goods, then withdraw them from bonded status and post that entry at the end of the day, like people were with Section 321 entries. The goods have to be moved from bonded status prior to you shipping the order. So you could maybe accumulate orders for a day and submit a request for only that inventory to be withdrawn to be shipped tomorrow, but that's probably not very practical. Plus, you're going to pay some software intermediary to make that entry into the CBP's ACE system for you. What that means practically is that if you're using a bonded facility, you're probably dripping out full pallet quantities at a time as minimally necessary to your 3PL to be able to continue the flow of commerce and minimize the amount of goods that are subject to today's high tariffs, hoping that they come down tomorrow where you can either release them all in bulk or begin dripping them out, hoping that the tariffs incrementally come down. There's only 3% of the warehouses in the United States that are bonded facilities. And the short answer is the administrative effort required to maintain this versus the low tariffs of yesterday just didn't make the equation worth it. Today, the cost of capital definitely makes it worth it. However, this is no necessarily short-term commitment for anybody. In the face of that, using this as the segue to talk about, forgive some of the background noise, in the face of that, using this as a segue to talk about what other brands are doing, there's a middle ground being pretty popularly advertised by a company called Portless. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with the company Portless. I think that they're good people who are really on a mission to solve some good problems for people. But Portless's business model in a nutshell is they've got a warehouse in Shenzhen where they are staging your goods and dripping them out as direct ship from China. It, on the surface, appears like all the benefits of a bonded facility without having to ship a bulk of goods and store them in a bonded facility within the US. They're advertising that, yes, you're going to pay these heightened tariffs, but they're going to be on the wholesale cost of the goods instead of the retail price of the goods. So if, for example's sake, you've got a $100 transaction with 145% tariffs, it's not going to be a net $245 transaction to the customer. If cost of goods at wholesale purchase from the manufacturer were $20, then it's going to be a $35 transaction or whatever that math adds up to be. We're definitely an opinion zone, and you should go talk to your customs broker. My opinion is that that is a presently legal, although on very, very shaky ground. What they're using is called the first sale doctrine to evaluate the value of those goods. Mm-hmm. The first sale doctrine would say that the sale is between, let's say, you, the retailer, and your manufacturer in China. That is a bona fide transaction between a manufacturer and what generally should be a U.S. entity. But when those goods are drop shipped, the CBP has repeatedly said that the last sale price should be the customs value declared on the transaction, meaning that I think the Trump administration's intention was to fully close the de minimis loophole, forcing goods to be fully imported into the U.S., otherwise pay tariffs at retail, and close this de minimis opportunity for everyone. The 3 criteria to meet first sale doctrine is that it's a bona fide sale to to you, the retailer who technically took title to the goods, although your lack of physical possession at any point in the chain probably calls that into question. The second is that it's an arm's length transaction, which, unless the manufacturer is selling to themselves, the US arm of their own company, is probably still fine if you are not your own manufacturer in China. And then the third is that the goods were absolutely destined for US soil. This is where I think the first sale doctrine fails. You cannot purchase a significant quantity of goods from your manufacturer, warehouse them at Portless, and confidently say these goods were destined for the US, all of them. The reality is you're probably shipping to other countries. Not all of that purchase order is going to be destined for the US. Now, can you probably show enough documentation to get away with that right now, shipping using Portless Direct and paying 145% tariffs, but it's at least one transaction at a time at the wholesale value of the goods?
Yep.
I think the answer is yes, but there is a ton of scrutiny on this loophole right now. I think on May 2nd, when the de minimis completely closes and the CBP catches up, this is the next target on their list, and their official guidance interpreted, I think, in the spirit of their intent, would say you need to be using the last sale doctrine. So that's a long way of saying I think the right answer is to tear the Band-Aid off and get the goods in the US. If you can't afford that cash, look at a bonded facility to take the sting off in the intermediate. And bonded facilities are in short supply. If you want your inventory to be prioritized or not to pay something exorbitant, I'd be getting on that today.
Super, super helpful, Chad. And Tyler, we should have Izzy Rosenzweig on the call, friend of the pod, who's the founder of Portless, and we can have him dive in a bit more into the Portless business model and the future of what that holds. But Chad, this is super, super helpful. For the audience's context, just to reiterate again, right? A bonded warehouse enables you to temporarily defer the duties paid. Rather than paying the duties upon import, you pay the duties upon fulfillment effectively. Chad, one thing just to clarify and to chat about. There's two types of bonded warehouses, right? A traditional bonded warehouse and then a free trade zone driven bonded warehouse. There are slight differences in when the duty is on when the duty is calculated based on the difference in the two types of warehouses, correct? Could you share a bit more with the audience about the difference there?
I'm gonna punt that I don't have an absolute answer on this, but this was definitely the question at the top of the list for us to answer, at least on a bonded facility in the last 2 weeks. I can say very confidently at a bonded facility, it's when the goods are withdrawn. In a free trade zone facility, I think it is when the goods are officially withdrawn as well. The difference is an FTZ facility gives you the ability to modify the goods in a way that creates a different finished good and to withdraw the components under potentially different tariff codes contingent on a few different things, as if like, hey, these components are destined to make shoes, these components are destined to be just sold as general fabric. I think in the context of the vast majority of us as e-commerce sellers, we're delivering finished goods. Kitting, bundling, combining products to be sold, that is not a function of manufacturing a component really at all. So I think for the purposes of like, can we hold our breath and see if tariffs are going to come down? FTZ bonded are practically the same. I think bonded satisfies the requirements for the vast majority of us.
And just as a reminder for everyone on the call, we had Graham Anderson from Importal, who was a licensed customs broker. Chad, I don't know if you've met Graham, third generation licensed customs broker, former flex porter, and then now the founder of Importal, an AI powered trade compliance platform. And for the audience, one of the reminders that Graham gave us is the way the US government, for simplicity's sake, draws the line on whether or not a product has undergone sufficient material transformation to be filed under a different category to pay a different duty on it is very simply, does the transformation put the product into a different HTS classification, yes or no? And so what Chad is describing, right, the acts done at a warehouse of assembling a final product, kitting it, bundling it together, putting it in the final box for the packaging, the primary, the secondary packaging, and then getting it out to either a wholesale customer, a B2B customer, a direct-to-consumer customer. That typically does not change the actual substance of the product enough to reclassify it. And so I say all this with just a reminder for those in the audience, playing the can we reclassify goods game is a very dangerous one. It's a very slippery slope, as we've all said multiple times. Please speak to your customs broker before trying to go down that pathway. But Chad, maybe this is a good segue into pulling things a little bit more upstream in the supply chain. Okay, so a lot of companies have come to us and have kind of asked us, hey, Tyler, hey, Prince, is there a world where, let's say, for example, I'll give a classic example. Let's say I spoke to a company a few weeks ago that was importing toys with magnets into the US, okay? And that was being tariffed at a certain rate because of the material, because of the product, and because of the import from China to the US. Their question was, guys, is there a world where I can import the raw magnetic material into India, do the final toy assembly in India, and then import it into the US? And does that actually make more or less sense? And so, Chad, when thinking about some of these optimizations, how do you approach that? Are you purely looking at it from a what is my final landed cost of this product standpoint? Are you thinking about it based on the supply chain complexity? Like what goes into one's mind when thinking about these optimizations?
Man, I think I might be voted most likely to find a loophole. And maybe that's just my decade of selling on Amazon to try to navigate all of the moving goalposts and complexities. After talking to the CBP, um, look, they were very accommodating, but they were also very jaded. I think they're just used to chasing guys who are opportunists or very entrepreneurial, who are looking for the edge to beat the system. And looked at it in a very reductive way. We're all just trying to manipulate the rule book for some potential savings. In my opinion, those are always short term. This is not really that novel of an idea to do some border hopping or to do some minor manipulation or to try to reclassify things for the technical advantage. And I think the CBP is going to be overwhelmed with that, but this is par for the course for them. It's not like there is a net increase in goods coming into the US necessarily right now. I think they are used to scrutinizing all of this and they're prepared when the value of committing fraud has increased so dramatically that they should see fraud increasing. I'm not accusing anybody necessarily of fraud, but I think that the amount of effort involved to readjust your supply chain in response to a notoriously unpredictable politician who seems to be sending everybody upside down with a tweet every evening is probably long term not going to be get the juice isn't worth the squeeze. If it were me in my retailers' positions, I would probably just be looking to offset the immediate impacts as much as I can through some constrictions in my just some belt tightening generally in operations. And this is a great excuse to do something that we all should probably be doing anyway, which is focusing on the bottom line instead of the top line here initially. And then if this administration telegraphs that these changes are extremely long term, then I'd probably be looking at reorienting my supply chain permanently to take advantage of some loopholes that could net some incremental savings.
Got it. Makes sense. No, totally fair there. Tyler, I saw that we started to get a question or two in. Want to start going through a couple of questions, just keeping an eye on the calendar.
Definitely. And thanks, Joanne, for your question. And Other folks in the audience, please participate in the Q&A. I know we've had a couple of customs brokers on the line. Now we have logistics and 3PL expert on, so any fulfillment related questions, and I see some fulfillment customers of Pietra on here, so don't be shy. So question from Joanne. This might be off topic, but one of my manufacturers in China said DHL will not accept their shipments to us over $800. They have to make multiple shipments. All of my other manufacturers have no issue since we are B2B. Any thoughts or insight on that?
Chad, let's chat a little bit about international shipping and parcel shipping. Any thoughts based on what Joanne just asked there?
Joanne, there's not a good answer to your question. I think that DHL's policy is mostly because of their uncertainty and how they should be formally admitting these shipments. Previously, sub $800 shipments were going through the de minimis loophole of, well, not loophole, the de minimis threshold of being able to clear without owing any duties and taxes. Then there was a $2,500 threshold for which formal entry was required, and the CBP was scrutinizing those shipments a lot more closely. Chinese sellers were savvy enough to almost always get those shipments under $800 just to avoid all of that together. But the informal entry type 11 was the $800 to $2,500 classification. DHL just didn't have any volume above 2,500, and nobody else wanted to. It was just as easy to structure your shipment into 4 sub $800 shipments on different days as it was to deal with the $800 to $2,500 radius. I think the easiest answer is they don't have the infrastructure to deal with that. I'm seeing your addition there. The odd part is that they've always shipped us via DHL for $20,000 plus order. Well, there's your answer. The parcel is not going to deal with the $800 to $2,500 entry. I think that there's a totally different division who's dealing with formal entry above $2,500, and they don't want to deal with these considerably small parcel but still high value shipments.
And Chad, just teeing off of what you just said there, I can actually chat with the audience about this. Is we've directly seen this firsthand via Pietra, Factor Quality, etc. This is a really important thing to note, guys. These large international shipping companies, the DHLs, the FedExes, the expediters, like anyone who serves in and around helping goods move from point A to point B, have completely different teams that focus and specialize on e-commerce entries, that specialize on air freight shipments, that focus on ocean container. And even within ocean container, they will have different teams that specialize on LCL, which is less than container load, and then FCL, which is full container load shipments. And the thing to remember for everyone who's listening in on this call is these are operationally intensive companies. And so they break up their business divisions like this to try and juice as much operational efficiency out of every type of these divisions as they can. And that's why these specializations happen. So what's happened over time is for the last 20 years or so, Chad, these large businesses, the expediters, the DHLs of the world, have almost created silos within those different parts of the organization. What's happening right now is as the e-commerce teams at DHL are starting to just candidly lose some of their ability to ship en masse the way that they have, a lot of that shipment volume will have to move over to the teams that are on the air freight teams, the traditional LCL or FCL ocean teams. And they will start have to that those teams will start having to take on the operational burden of importing these goods, of filing customs, and then ultimately getting these goods into the US and then to and fulfillment centers and warehouses. So that's a lot of where this kind of messiness comes from. This goes back to folks, rather than working directly with shipping logistics companies, carriers, the strong recommendation, especially for kind of emerging e-commerce entrepreneurs and sellers, is talk to a freight forwarder. The role of a freight forwarder is to sit as a layer on top of every layer underneath in the supply chain that helps move your inventory from factory floor to fulfillment center to ultimately front door in certain cases. Flexport is, best known as kind of the modern digitally enabled freight forwarder. There are many others. In part, DHL expeditors also do have their own freight forwarding divisions, but a good freight forwarder and a good customs broker will help you navigate large parts of this. But Joanne, sorry to hear that you were going through that, but hopefully that can help. Joanne's question is, if shipping air, do you still recommend using a freight forwarder? Chad, how would you think about when is a good time to tap into a freight forwarder for what volume of shipments, for what level of operational intensity?
I'm gonna be honest and say that I don't know the right answer to that question. I defer to somebody who's a little bit more of an expert on the subject. I'm great for your questions about when it's in the U.S. and what to do with it.
No, no worries, Joanne. When shipping air, yes, you can still use a freight forwarder. So the way that a freight forwarder works is the difference ultimately comes down to this, right? Anyone can book space directly on a carrier to get their inventory in from the US, from China to the US or anywhere else in the world to the US. The freight forwarder just does it on your behalf, and they oversee the complexities of the operations of consolidating the inventory, getting it onto a plane, and then getting it into the US on your behalf. I think especially during such a tumultuous time, it is better to work with a freight forwarder, if anything, because if something goes wrong, uh, think of all of these large carriers as having customer service queues and an endless stream of tickets that get prioritized on which ones to respond to and which ones to not. The benefit that a freight forwarder has is it aggregates hundreds of customers like yourself and a thousand other e-commerce merchants and importers, and then forces its way up to the top of the customer response queue. And Tyler, who actually works and runs large parts of our customer experience team here at Pietra, can tell you about the challenges of getting back to customers on time for logistics and supply chain issues. And so, working with a freight forwarder to kind of fight the case for you, in and of itself is hugely valuable. Just last week, we had a customer who lost a bunch of inventory in transit from Switzerland into the US. And ultimately, we connected them with a freight forwarder who was able to then work with their carrier to locate and triangulate where that inventory was. And so, yes, we would definitely recommend working with a freight forwarder if you're newer to this. Tyler, anything else to add in there?
No, I think you covered it well.
Okay, wonderful. Chad, let's chat a little bit about fulfillment. And so, a big question, and let's talk about fulfillment and then ultimately distribution. Okay. So, a lot of questions that we've gotten over the last couple of weeks is how are brands responding to the financial impact of this on their P&L? Okay. And so, we know that on the direct to consumer side, if you're an e-commerce merchant that sells direct to consumer, you can increase prices on your website, and it's not the worst thing in the world. You communicate to your customers. How does that work in large cases for B2B sales? When you are a merchant that's selling into Walmart, into Target, into Sephora, do you have the ability to adjust your prices on the fly as you are fulfilling orders into these B2B customers? Is there anything that you'd be able to comment on there?
Um, you know, yes, because I was on the retail side for a decade. We had 15,000 SKUs and we purchased from 150 different manufacturers. I truly, these supply chain constraints and additional costs to get goods into the US are pretty reminiscent of what happened during COVID. So container prices jumped to 40,000 a piece. That has a meaningful impact on the unit economics of every unit that was on there. Now, we were one manufacturer or one retailer that was definitely punching above our weight by comparison to we dealt with Le Creuset and KitchenAid and Wusthof, and then many other smaller, more niche manufacturers that made some custom goods. And we got to hear what was Target saying to KitchenAid, what were they saying to what was Williams Sonoma saying to Le Creuset. I think that the initial reaction from the big guys was to throw their weight around and to threaten some of the merchandising space, which a lot of really big brands felt was their most valuable resource. Routine exposure to customers. And I saw that a lot of manufacturers were prioritizing those relationships where they felt like retailers were creating incremental business for net new exposure to clients and eating the costs of the increases there, mostly because they were kind of behind the eight ball to whoever the retailer could convince to be more agreeable to maintaining their margin. You got to think that these retailers want to remain competitively priced to the end consumer, and they're working backwards from just not alienating their consumer who may not realize all of the inputs in the supply chain that are leading to higher prices. What I would say to someone who's doing business with the big guys is to be as transparent as possible and say, here are the net new increases that we're seeing. Here's the portion of this that we're going to absorb, and here's what we would like to see on a stepwise basis. We own a certain amount of inventory at this cost. We're absorbing new inventory at this cost, which creates an average of this. We're willing to share in the increase, but we need you to commit to a temporary price increase today, subject to some potential decreases if we see the tariff impact reducing tomorrow.
Super, super helpful. I think the synthesis for the audience is ultimately, retailers, they need to continue to move inventory as well, right? And any changes that happen to the cost of importing goods typically trickle down into, either an inflationary or deflationary measurement across the entire economy. And so be transparent with the retailers, especially if you're shipping big box into the Walmarts, the Targets, the Nordstrom, Saks, the, Sephora's of the world. And communicate with them, like Chad said, right? How much of this increase in cost of goods sold are you able to absorb as a brand and take a hit to your gross margin on, and how much would you like to see passed along to the end consumer? Tyler,
I
I
guess
think
I'd throw one other tidbit on there.
please, yeah.
We did business with a lot of brands who had MAP pricing or minimum advertised price. It's the reason you go online and every retailer is selling a KitchenAid mixer at $299.99. Is there's practically some degree of price control that they have across the field. Now, consumers don't want to feel the sting of increased prices, and you certainly don't want to lose market share to a competitor who has not updated those prices. But some of the smart brands said, look, I know a lot of our retailers own inventory at today's cost. I know that they don't want to absorb a margin hit tomorrow from the increased price that I'm going to have to pass on to them thanks to these tariffs. So let's make a coordinated push to raise that MAP price, even just temporarily, across our entire channel, which is today going to inflate their margin, which is going to tomorrow make them more tolerant of absorbing an increased cost where that margin begins to normalize. Then, they win today, they bet tomorrow. You're betting that tomorrow tariffs could come down, and then it's a long-term win, or at least margin's going to normalize back to the center where they don't feel the sting quite as much.
Super, super helpful. And makes a ton of sense. Tyler, shall we I think Joanna had a question that we want to take.
Yes, definitely. And a good question, a little bit more Shopify specific, but I can take a stab at this one and would welcome both of your insight. So Joanne shares, we ship to retailers across the country. We're also on Shopify wholesale. We've been charging a handling charge to help with some of these new expenses. Shopify won't allow us to charge over $15. Do you know a way around this? We prefer to not change our line items. I presume that means the prices on your individual items, top line prices. So Shopify has the baked in $15 fee, and I believe you can charge a credit card surcharge fee that maxes at like 2.7%. I also believe there are apps in the Shopify store that allow you to add nominal fees to cover surcharges, add to location-based orders, tariffs, etc. Upcharge is one I've heard of. So I would just explore the Shopify store and search in their search bar, surcharge apps or ad hoc fees, and you should get some good search results. Check out the reviews. People don't hesitate to share their experience with all these apps on the Shopify store. That's my recommendation for that one.
Chad, anything else to add there?
No, no, I think that covered.
Cool, amazing. Tyler, in the last couple of minutes we have, any last questions, any last things that we want to cover?
None from the audience, but I'm gonna throw it out as maybe a a fun wild card at the end, not necessarily tariffs related, but another topic on a lot of people and businesses' minds. Chad, are you hearing anything on the AI front? Have you done anything at your 3PL? Are you hearing anything from brands that you work with? What does AI mean in your world right now?
Um, I went to Manifest this year. That's a parcel and shipping conference for the industry. There's really no customers there, and there must have been 200 companies, and every one of them threw AI somewhere in their marketing copy. Um, it's the buzzword of the day. In practical terms for us, it helps in nuance management in some degree of summarizing the changes that we make on ensuring that our actions align with our clients' intent of here is what's important to them relative to time and transit to overall gross cost of postage. What I think it's going to help with ultimately is consolidating and digesting information on the inbound side, which from freight forward is a notoriously fragmented industry with tons and tons of subcontractors that report things in extremely crude, almost like comically bad ways, which just is a whole lot of poor visibility. The Flexports of the world have fixed that by doing a vertically integrated solution, but the rest of the world is definitely still in the dark ages on this. So that is where we're applying the majority of our focus today, is just taking the stuff that only a human could interpret and put into a spreadsheet and trying to automate it to that extent.
Super, super helpful. Awesome, guys. Well, Chad, thank you so much for coming on, friend of the pod. And thank you to everyone else who's been listening in. Join us again tomorrow. And Tyler, I'll finish with the traditional last question. If anyone has any further questions or things that they're looking for help with around sourcing, logistics, fulfillment, what is the best way to reach us at Pietra, and then to channel these folks over to the right resources?
Yes, as always, we are very responsive to email and chat support questions. For email, it's just creators@pietrastudio.com. You'll get a response from a live agent very quickly during business hours. We also have our live chat agents. If you're logged into the system, just click that chat bubble in the lower right-hand corner. Reach out to a chat support agent there. Tons of updated information in our Help Center and FAQ section. We've recently added a tariffs and trade section there, which provides a lot of up-to-date information, and we're continuously adding to that library as well. Saul, great to see you. Thanks for the cameo at the end here. Saul, Pietra's CFO. We were chatting a little bit earlier about below the line cost savings. I'll put a little pitch in for Saul's session from last week. Check out the webinar recording. He walked us through a number of detailed ways we and brands can think about reducing below the line costs. So a little internal pitch there.
Awesome. Super, super excited, folks. Thank you everyone again for hopping on. Chad, thanks so much for the time, and we'll
Pleasure.
see you soon.
I
Bye now.
appreciate
All
it,
right.
guys.
Thanks,
Take care,
guys.
everyone. Bye now.